Chapter 4. Sanders! Cade called out as they approached. The family, it seemed, hadn't noticed them coming down the road. They seemed distracted, though by what was hard to say. Cade! Sanders called back, surprised, but pleasantly so. What are you doing here? The boy asked, running up and clapping an arm around Cade's shoulder. Sanders was the closest thing Cade had to a friend. The town to the south was Nearton, and whenever Cade made the trip there, he always made time to see Sanders. They had spent hours during the Middens festival, teasing the girls and running off to hide, or working together on grand heists of baked goods from under the baker's nose. Sanders had come to the town when he was young. He wasn't born there, so he was always a bit of an outsider to the other boys, and the rarity with which Cade came to the town placed him in the same lonely boat. So if only out of necessity at first, they quickly became friends. We're moving to Nearset for a while, Cade told his friend. He noted that Emin had pulled Sasha up to the wagon and was making conversation with Sanders's mother, while Farlan was eyeing up what looked to be a broken wagon wheel on the large wagon. Because of Dahl? Sanders blurted out excitedly. Cade, that's awesome. So are we. Dahl heard that some of the town were going to Nearset until Dahl gets found again, so he decided we'd go too with the wagon and try and make a profit out of it. Only then did Cade notice that the wagon was heaped full of mats, rugs, and blankets, each a different pattern, each hand-woven by Sanders's ma or da. Cade suspected it was predominantly blankets. With the shelters opening, they were surely going to try and sell as many blankets as they could and make some coin that way. So why are you here, though? Cade asked, pointing at the wagon as it sat unmoving in the middle of the road. Well, I mean, do you want to drag the wagon? 'Cause please do. I know my da would be mighty grateful. Might even give you a carrot to say thanks. Oh. Yeah, Sanders said with a grin. They wandered back to the wagon. Something spooked him and he bolted. Darndest thing, too. Never been the flighty type, has old Bernard. Sanders's father, Tommen, was a lean man in his middle years that moved his hands and arms so much when he spoke that it was likely the sole reason he was so lean. Looking to Farlan, he continued in a flurry. We didn't know what to do, but what with you here now, the formers of Reed made the day in our favour. The man ended with fingers interlocked and a wide grin on his face. It was the look of a merchant through and through. What's left of it, Farlan replied, looking grimly at the darkening sky. I can help you lift the wagon and fit a second wheel. I assume you've another strap below, but there's nothing we can do for your horse. Even an Arnvart's strength has limits. I won't be able to drag this all the way to Nearset. I recommend you leave it here and come with me now. If you wish, I can come back with you tomorrow and we can look for your horse then. Tommen quickly exploded into a mess of limbs, though this time even Sanders and his mother Miran chimed in. That just isn't an option. If we lose an entire day's trade, we might as well not have made the trip. We're already losing coin. We have to be there tomorrow, Speaker. And what about Bernard? We can't leave him out here. I understand it's not what you want to hear, but I don't want to still be on our way when night falls. And if I may be so bold, neither do you. If you have any sense in you, you can come with us, or you can stay out here. Hope your horse comes back. But we must be moving. He said the last with a gesture to Emin and the cart. Tommen looked to Miran, and his arms dropped to his side, motionless. Sanders looked to Cade and whispered, Can you help, please? And what if we stayed to help them look? Cade asked. Emin rolled his eyes from atop the cart. Just another minor annoyance in a day full of small bothers. Farlan looked to Cade with the look of a man that understood he was slowly being backed into something he didn't want to do. Please, lad. This is a bad idea. We need to be moving on. But if we stay, what will you do? Will you leave us all here to find our own way? Cade felt no small amount of guilt at manipulating the man. He didn't want to, but Sanders was a friend. Besides, it's what the Arnvart were for. You're supposed to protect us, right? Yes, but that... So while you fix the wagon, me and Sanders can find Bernard. Sanders leaned in to whisper in Cade's ear. Thanks, brother. Emin called down from the wagon.
Lad, it was at your insistence that we're out here in the first damn place. Very dangerous veer, as I remember. Yes? Can't we just get there?
Granda, but you said it was totally safe. If it's safe, then there's no harm in helping a friend, right? Or were you wrong? Emin huffed, then crossed his arms as he huddled down in his warm travelling cloak, clearly not intending to admit any mistakes, and resigning himself not to move until the fuss was all over. Farland sighed a deep breath. Just, hurry up. Sanders grabbed Cade's arm and tugged him off the road and up a slight embankment, saying something about this being the way that their horse had run off. Alrighty, so for this section, I do like that Cade is friends with Sanders. I don't think it seems too coincidental that the people he run into on the road are, friends of his. I feel like when I revise this, I might tone it down a bit so that instead of being basically his best friend in the whole wide world, he becomes, just a friend, like someone he's, quite close with, but not like the only friend he ever had type deal. Because I think it might be overstating it, and it doesn't need to be so, so important. Next, the more I've been thinking about how it should be, I mentioned this in a previous video about how it should be that, sorry, excuse me. But yeah, so I've been thinking more on how it should be that there are Veer just sort of, out and about, and why it would be that Cade doesn't live, in a walled off city. And the more I think about it, the more I'm sort of realizing that I don't really think it needs any more explanation than there is. Basically, the world is set up such that there are areas where there are lots of Veer around, and there are areas where there are very few. And moreover, there are areas where there are Veer Nuhita in the region, which would be incredibly dangerous, because they're the real problem. Smaller Veer are definitely a danger, but they're only a danger in the same way that, for example, if you go traipsing off in the woods, you might run into a wolf or whatever, or, a bear, right? They're dangerous, but they're not so dangerous that people just choose to, disappear completely from that region. It's just a threat. However, the Veer Nuhita are dangerous enough that you can't be there. And so that sort of leaves it open very much in this situation for, Cade and Emmon live between towns. Their home is still defensible sort of thing, like it's set up to exist in a world where there are Veer. But because there's no Veer Nuhita in the region, it's okay. It's not, they're still the outliers. Not many people live outside of walled cities, but it's doable. Then when a Veer Nuhita moves into the region, it makes sense then for people like Sanders to, it's not, basically, I don't think it's that strange that they would risk traveling the road with a Veer Nuhita around to get to Nearsit, which is now, in later chapters, I've decided that's actually just going to be the very first fortress city that they run into, a place called Fes Araranth. And I don't think it's that strange. And it does make sense then why Cade and Emmon would, be willing to go to a new place like it. But yeah, so it seems to me, or it seems fitting that they would be willing to travel with the Veer around. And it also, I feel like it cements in my mind anyway the way I wanted the world to work with regards to the Veer, that like there are more and less dangerous Veer that are sort of tracked. In later chapters, I've also worked out like a good way for them to be tracked, potentially. Something about how the Unwrapped work, which I think is a decent idea. This is something I've run into where if you say Rashin Dal has, he's heading south, how do they know? Because there's no real technology in this world, and the people that are really good at seeing Veer aren't, or seeing anything, like the people that are, unwrapped, the people that can see energies, they're not particularly combat proficient. So it's also like, if they're out in the woods, are they with Anvat while they're out there, and if they are, sort of how are they keeping up with Rashin Dal to track him without, being caught by him type thing. Because obviously the Veer is dangerous to not just to normal people, but to Anvat and Unwrapped. So there needs to be a way for them to be tracked. But I think, given what I now know about how the Unwrapped work, that it makes sense that they might actually just be like working like a scout corps, and they're out and about tracking. But yeah, and so that's all making more or less sense than it did before. And and lastly, this is another moment where sort of Cade is directly responsible for the shit that goes down. So, which I'm happy with. I think that's good, and I'd like to clear up the dialogue a little bit. Make the there's room, I think, to make it a bit more of a back and forth conversation with regards to why Emin wants to just get to the fucking, let's just get to the city, as opposed to Cade being like, well, look, you said it was safe, and the end where he's like, if it's safe, then there's no harm in helping a friend, right? Or were you wrong? That doesn't really flow very well. It doesn't sound like how people talk. But the sentiment is good. I'm trying to get across the idea that, he's calling Emin out. He's saying, listen, you prideful old man. Either admit that you're wrong, or I can go help my friend. And the prideful old man doesn't admit anything. And so, he sort of manipulated the situation such that he could, go help his friend. But it doesn't, the sentiment is there. It's just not very well worded. Which, now that I've been thinking a bit more about my writing, I think is something I do a fair bit. I get the sentiment right, but just not the delivery. I know I'm trying to describe some emotion in someone, or or I feel like, they have this particular motive, and so they say a certain thing, but it's maybe that I'm saying it in the most direct way, whereas they need, they probably wouldn't say it in that way, even though they have that motive still. So, pretty short chapter, this one. I'm wondering if perhaps this should be, let's see how many words this is. This could be extended or combined with the next chapter, because most of my chapters are 2,000 words and this one's 1,000. Although the next one is fairly big, so hard to say. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for listening.